The diner closed at midnight. Caleb wiped down the last booth. His hands smelled like bleach and bacon grease. The neon sign in the window buzzed and flickered. October. The kind of October that bites through a thin jacket. He counted his tips. $73 and change. His birthday money, 18. He should have felt something. Pride, excitement, anything. But all he felt was tired. The kind of tired that lives in your bones. The kind 2 years of grief carves into a kid until there's nothing left to carve. He pulled his jacket tighter and started walking. The streets were empty. A dog barked somewhere behind a fence. A car rolled past with its headlights low. The houses on Maple Street still had pumpkins on their porches. Someone's wind chime tinkled in the cold. He turned the corner onto his street and stopped, because there was a box on the porch. Not a birthday box, not wrapped, not bowed. Just a brown cardboard box with packing tape and his name written across the top in sharp black marker. Caleb. He stared at it for a long time. Then he climbed the steps. The key in his hand felt heavier than it should have. He'd carried that key for 2 years, through every shift, through every long bus ride home, through every dinner he ate alone at the kitchen counter while Brenda and her 2 kids laughed at something on TV. He turned it in the lock. The house smelled like dish soap and somebody else's cologne. Roy's cologne. The man Brenda had introduced 6 months ago as a friend. The man who now had a toothbrush in the bathroom. The man who watched Caleb with eyes that said, temporary. The TV was off. The kids were asleep. The house was quiet in that thick, humming way old houses get when they're holding their breath. Brenda was at the kitchen table, a mug of tea in front of her, a stack of envelopes beside it. She didn't look up when he came in. Sit down, Caleb. He didn't sit. She finally looked at him. Her eyes were tired. There were lines around them he'd never noticed before. Her hair was pulled back in a way that made her face look harder. Your things are on the porch. He nodded slowly. There's a bus ticket in the top envelope. 7 a.m. Willow Creek. Willow Creek. The name sat on his tongue like a stone. Familiar somehow, like a song his mother used to hum but he couldn't place. Your grandmother. Brenda took a long breath. Your mother's mother. Eleanor. She left you something in her will. The lawyer called last week. It cleared probate when you turned 18. His grandmother. A flicker. A woman with flour on her hands. A laugh like wind through an open window. A garden full of yellow flowers. Then nothing. She's been dead 6 years. Brenda said. 6 years. 6 years his father had never told him. What did she leave me? A carriage house. Brenda gave a short, dry laugh. Some old building outside of Willow Creek. The lawyer said it's been empty for a decade. He called it a liability. A liability. The word landed wrong. Too rehearsed, like she'd practiced it. So that's it. That's it. He looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman his father had married 7 months after his mother's funeral. The woman who'd taken down every photograph of his mother within the first year. The woman who'd told him at 14 that she wasn't trying to replace anyone, but he'd noticed she stopped saying it after the wedding. I have to think about my own family now, she said. I'm not your family. Caleb. It's fine, really. He picked up the envelope from the table. It was thick, heavier than it should have been. He could feel something hard inside. A key, maybe 2. He turned to go. Caleb. He stopped at the doorway. Didn't turn around. Your father loved you. He waited for her to say more. She didn't. He closed the door behind him without slamming it. The cardboard box held everything he owned. 2 pairs of jeans, 3 T-shirts. The blue sweater his mother had bought him the Christmas before she got sick. A paperback copy of The Old Man and the Sea with his name in the front. His high school diploma. A framed photo of him and his mum at the beach when he was 7, and his father's wristwatch. He sat down on the porch step and held it in his palm. The leather strap was cracked. The face was scratched. It still ticked. His father had worn it every day until the morning of the accident. Caleb pressed it to his ear. Listened. Tick, 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 like a small heart in his hand. He put it on. The strap was too big. It slid halfway up his forearm. He didn't care. He stood up. He picked up the box. And he walked. The motel near the bus station had a flickering vacancy sign and carpets that smelled like old smoke. He paid $40 for a room. The clerk didn't look at him. There was a Coke machine in the corner that hummed too loud. The room had one bed, one lamp, one window that looked out at the parking lot. He sat on the edge of the mattress. Springs creaked. He set the envelope from Brenda on the bedspread and dumped the contents. A bus ticket. A set of keys on a steel ring. One was big and ornate, black iron, cloverleaf-shaped head. The other was smaller, brass, plain, a folded document with words like deed and parcel and easement, and a letter on heavy cream-colored paper from a law firm. Crane and Whitfield, attorneys at law, Willow Creek. He read it twice. Eleanor Whitaker, deceased, 6 years. Sole asset, 112 Old Mill Road. Held in trust until his 18th birthday. A standing offer from a development company. $400,000. $400,000! He read that line 3 times. For a building everyone kept calling worthless. Something snagged in his chest, something small and sharp. Because liabilities don't get $400,000 offers. He folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, held the iron key up to the lamplight and turned it slowly. It was beautiful, old, heavy, made by someone who cared. He set it down. He lay back on the bed. He stared at the water stains on the ceiling and tried to remember his grandmother's face. A flicker, a laugh, the smell of bread. He fell asleep with his clothes on. He almost didn't go through his father's old room before he left for the bus station. He almost just took the box and walked. But something pulled him back. The room was a guest room now. Brenda had stripped the wallpaper, painted everything beige, replaced the bed. Nothing of his father's was visible. Caleb opened the closet. Empty. Hangers. A vacuum cleaner. He opened the dresser drawers. Empty. 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 He was about to give up, until he pulled the bottom drawer all the way out. There was a gap behind it, a narrow space between the drawer and the back of the dresser, and tucked in that gap, wrapped in a brown paper grocery bag. A bundle. He pulled it out with both hands. His heart was already racing before he opened it. He didn't know why. He didn't know what he expected. He sat on the edge of the bed and unwrapped the paper. Letters. A stack of them. More than a dozen. All sealed. All addressed to the same person, in the same elegant, looping handwriting. Master Caleb Whitaker, 4126 Pine Grove Lane, his address, his name. He turned the top one over. Return address. Eleanor Whitaker, 112 Old Mill Road, Willow Creek, his grandmother. His grandmother had written him letters. His grandmother had written him letters his whole childhood, and his father had hidden them. Every single one. His hand started to shake. He flipped through the stack. The earliest postmark was 2006. The latest was 6 years ago. The year she died. Some had birthday cards inside. He could feel the bulk through the envelope. Some were thinner. Letters. Just letters. A childhood of letters. A childhood of a grandmother who'd never stopped writing. A childhood of his father lying. He pressed the bundle against his chest. He didn't cry. Not yet. The crying was coming. He could feel it crouched somewhere behind his ribs, waiting. But not yet. He needed to get to the bus. He put the letters in his box. He closed the dresser drawer. He walked out of the house and didn't look back. The bus station was almost empty at 6:30 in the morning. A few drunks slumped on benches. A woman knitting. A man in a flannel shirt drinking coffee from a styrofoam cup. Caleb sat with his box on the seat beside him. He didn't open the letters. He didn't open the letters because he was afraid of what he might find, afraid of what it might do to him, afraid he'd start reading and not be able to stop and miss the bus and end up sleeping on the station floor. So he just held them, felt the weight of them in his lap. A whole woman he'd never known. The bus arrived at 6:58, hissed its brakes, opened its doors. Caleb climbed on, found a window seat near the back, set the box at his feet. The driver pulled out into the grey morning. The town fell away behind him. The fields began. Flat, empty. Skeleton trees holding up a slate sky. He pressed his forehead against the cold glass and watched the world go by. And somewhere around the 3rd hour, when the bus had emptied out to just him and an old woman knitting 2 rows ahead, he heard her speak. "Honey, you all right?" He turned. She had silver hair pulled into a low bun, cheeks pink from the cold, a blue cardigan, a wicker basket on the seat beside her, with what looked like baked goods wrapped in wax paper. She wore reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Her eyes were the color of weak tea and impossibly kind. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." He didn't know what to say to that. She smiled, didn't push. "Where are you headed?" "Willow Creek." She paused. Her knitting needles stopped. "Willow Creek." "Yes, Mom." "Are you visiting somebody?" "Sort of." She studied him for a long moment. Then she set her knitting down on her lap. "What's your name, honey?" "Caleb." "Caleb what?" He hesitated. He didn't know why. "Whitaker." The old woman put her hand over her mouth. She didn't say anything for a long time. Her eyes filled with tears. "Oh, sweetheart." "Mom?" "Oh, sweet boy." She took her glasses off, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Her hand was trembling. "You're Nellie's grandson." The world tilted. "You knew her?" "Knew her." A wet laugh. "Honey, Eleanor Whitaker was my best friend for 51 years. He couldn't breathe. "She told me you'd come." "She what?" "She told me. Years ago. She said one day a young man with his mother's eyes was going to walk into Willow Creek. She made me promise. She said I'd know him when I saw him." She reached across the aisle and put her hand on his arm. Her hand was warm, soft, steady. "My name is Pearl. I'm so glad to finally meet you." The crying that had been crouched behind his ribs for 2 years stood up. He didn't let it out. Not on the bus. Not in front of this kind stranger who wasn't a stranger at all, but he felt it stand. He felt it stretch. He felt it know its name. Pearl talked the rest of the way. She talked about Willow Creek, about the bakery she ran on Main Street, about her late husband Frank, who'd passed in 2011, about the Lutheran church on the corner of Elm where Nellie had taught Sunday school. She talked about Nellie, how she could grow tomatoes in a drought, how she'd once driven through a blizzard to deliver insulin to a diabetic woman whose road was blocked, how she made the best apple pie in 3 counties and refused to give anyone the recipe except for one person. "Who?" Caleb asked. Pearl smiled. "Whoever showed up looking for it." He didn't understand. She didn't explain. She just patted his hand. When the bus rolled into Willow Creek just after noon, Caleb saw the town before he stepped off. Stone buildings, brick storefronts, a church spire, a river running silver behind the trees. It looked like a postcard somebody had folded up and forgotten in a drawer. Pearl gathered her basket, her knitting, her purse. She turned to him before she stood. Now you listen to me, Caleb Whitaker. Yes, Mom. You're going to go see Walter Crane today. He's the lawyer. His office is on Main and Elm, 3rd floor. Do you have his address? He nodded. Good. After you talk to Walter, you go out to the Carriage house. You read what's waiting for you there. You take your time. Okay. And when you're done, when you're ready, you come find me. She reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. What is this? It's a list. He unfolded it. 3 lines, written in handwriting that was elegant and shaky and unmistakable. He'd seen that handwriting on a dozen envelopes that morning. If Caleb comes, give him the chicken soup recipe, the one with garlic. If he's cold, give him the blue sweater I left in the cedar chest. If he cries, don't say anything. Just sit with him. His hand started to shake. She made me that list 9 years ago. Pearl said softly. She made me promise. He looked up. Pearl's eyes were wet. How could she know? Pearl smiled, a small, sad, knowing smile. Because, sweetheart, your grandmother loved you, even when she couldn't be in the room. She loved you in every minute she wasn't allowed to. He couldn't speak. He couldn't. The bus driver called out the stop. Pearl stood, adjusted her basket, walked to the front. But she stopped before she got off. She turned around. Caleb. Yes, Mum. Welcome home. The lawyer's office was exactly what he expected. Walls of dark wood, shelves of books, a heavy desk. The smell of old paper and pipe tobacco, even though no one was smoking. Walter Crane was in his late 70s. Thin, white hair combed back, a bow tie, hands spotted with age but steady. His eyes were sharp and sad in equal measure. He stood up when Caleb came in. Mr. Whitaker. Caleb. Caleb. He held out his hand. I'm Walter. I was your grandmother's friend before I was her lawyer. Please, sit. Caleb sat. The chair was soft and old. He set his cardboard box at his feet. Walter looked at the box for a long moment. Then he looked at Caleb. Is that everything? Yes, sir. Walter closed his eyes briefly. He nodded once. He opened a drawer. Your grandmother left specific instructions. I'm going to follow them in order. Okay. Walter pulled out a folder. First, the Carriage house. The deed is in your name as of 7 this morning. Property taxes are paid through the end of the year. There's a standing offer on the property from Pinnacle Development Group for $400,000. They've been making that offer for 9 years. They keep raising it slightly. Last month it went up by $25,000. Why? Why what? Why do they want it so much? Walter studied him. That's a good question, Caleb, and one your grandmother said you would ask, but I'm not allowed to answer it yet. Not allowed. By her. Her instructions are very specific. You read what's at the Carriage house first, then you come back. Then we talk? Okay. Walter slid 2 keys across the desk. A big iron one with a cloverleaf head. A small brass one. Caleb already had matching keys, the ones from Brenda's envelope. What are these for? The house. Your stepmother had her copies. These are yours. He picked them up. They were heavier than the ones he'd been carrying. Mr. Crane. Walter, please. Walter, why didn't anyone tell me she was alive? Walter looked at his hands for a long time. Caleb, your grandmother was a complicated woman. She made some hard choices. They cost her things, including, I'm sorry to say, you. That's not an answer. I know. I'm asking why. Walter looked up. His eyes were wet. Because, son, some answers can only come from her. And she left them for you. At the house. On the desk. In a cedar box. Caleb stood up. His knees were shaking. He didn't know when that had started. How do I get there? 20 minutes walk. Past the old wrought iron gate at the edge of town. Down Old Mill Road. Through the oaks. You can't miss it. Okay. Caleb! He turned at the door. She loved you, whatever you find out there, whatever you read. Don't lose sight of that. He nodded. He couldn't speak. He walked out into the cold. The walk took 18 minutes. He counted because he needed something to count, because his mind was a hurricane and counting was a small, still thing he could hold on to. The road turned from pavement to gravel. The houses thinned. The trees thickened. The air smelled like wet leaves and pine sap. He passed a wrought iron gate hanging off one hinge. The mansion behind it was gone. Only a foundation remained, swallowed by weeds. He kept walking, past a stone wall, past a stand of oak trees so old they had to be older than the town. And then there it was. The Carriage house. It was bigger than he'd expected. 2 stories, dark stone, heavy timber beams, a slate roof that was patchy in places but standing, ivy climbing the south wall, moss thick on the north, a massive arched window on the 2nd floor, dark with grime, but still stunning. Like an eye watching the woods. It looked like it was waiting. He climbed 3 stone steps to a small human-sized door beside the great carriage doors. He took the brass key from his pocket. It was stiff. He had to lean his shoulder into it. The lock groaned. The door swung inward on protesting hinges. Cold air rolled out, smelling of dust, and dry earth, and something faint and floral. Lavender. His mother had loved lavender. He stepped inside. The door swung shut behind him with a soft click. His eyes adjusted slowly. A few thin shafts of light cut through the grimy windows, illuminating swirling galaxies of dust. He was in a vast open space. Cobblestone floor worn smooth. The faint outlines of horse stalls along one wall. A heavy wooden staircase climbing to the 2nd floor. In the center, under a canvas tarp, was a shape the size of a small car. He walked to it slowly. His footsteps echoed. He pulled the tarp back. A truck, a 1950s Ford pickup. Seafoam green paint, faded but unbroken. Chrome dulled but not rusted. Tires soft but holding. The cab perfectly preserved under its canvas shroud. He ran his hand along the hood. He didn't know why his throat closed up. He let the tarp fall. He climbed the stairs. Each step creaked. The banister was cool and solid. The 2nd floor was one enormous open room under exposed beams. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. A small kitchenette tucked into a corner. A simple wooden table and 2 chairs in the center. And under the arched window, a long, sturdy desk. On the desk, in the exact center, was a wooden box. Plain. Cedar. Brass latch. Clean. Everything in the building was covered in 6 years of dust. The box was clean, like someone had wiped it down that morning. His knees almost gave out. He walked to the desk, sat in the dusty chair, reached out. The wood was smooth and warm. He unhooked the small brass latch, lifted the lid. Inside, on a bed of faded blue velvet, was a stack of cream-colored envelopes tied with a silk ribbon. 12 of them, numbered in the top right corner. On top of the stack, a single folded sheet of paper. He picked it up with shaking hands. The handwriting was elegant, looping. The same handwriting from a dozen hidden envelopes in a paper bag in his box downstairs. For Caleb. Start here. He untied the ribbon, slid out the first letter. He sat in the dusty chair, in the silent room, in the long beam of pale autumn light pouring through the arched window. And he began to read. My dearest Caleb, if you are reading this, you are 18, which means you are a man, which means, I'm afraid, you are alone. I am so sorry for that. He had to stop. Already. The directness of it. The seeing of him. After 2 years of being a ghost in his own house, somebody was looking straight at him from beyond the grave. He took a breath. He kept reading. I am writing this to you when you are 9 years old. Your mother is gone. Your father is drowning, though he doesn't know it yet. I have been writing to you every birthday since you were born, and I will write to you every birthday until I cannot. I do not know if your father has given you any of these letters. I suspect he has not. If he hasn't, I forgive him. He is a man in pain, and pain makes us cruel in small ways we don't see. But there are things you need to know, things he could not bear to tell you, things I am writing down so that someday, somehow, the truth would find you. Let me start with this house. This was my home. It was my parents' home before me. My grandfather, Thomas Whitaker, was a stonemason. He worked for the Ashworth family, who owned the great estate. When the crash came in 1929, the Ashworths lost everything. They couldn't pay him in money, so they paid him in land. This carriage house. This is what they could give. This is what we built our family on. Your mother was born in this room you are sitting in. She took her first steps on these floors. She picked strawberries from the garden out back the summer she turned 7. He looked up. The room around him. The floor under his feet. His mother had taken her first steps right where he was sitting. He hadn't known. How could he have known? Nobody had told him. He kept reading. When your mother met your father, I was happy. He loved her. But he was a man who saw the world in straight lines. He saw this place as old, falling down. He wanted to give her a new house with new things, and your mother loved him enough to want what he wanted. They moved away when she was 23. When you were born, your mother brought you here. You were 6 months old. I held you right where the desk is now, by the window. I told you that this place would always be here, a safe harbor. Then your mother got sick, and everything broke. The medical bills were beyond what your father could carry. He did what frightened men do. He borrowed money he should not have borrowed, from people he should not have known. When your mother passed, the debt remained. And the people he owed were not the kind of people who forget. They threatened him. Then they threatened you. The room around Caleb went very still. The dust motes seemed to freeze in the light. He read the next sentence 3 times before it landed. They told your father that if he could not pay, they would take you. As collateral. He thought of being 7 years old, walking home from school with his red backpack, crossing the parking lot at the grocery store with his mother's hand around his. He hadn't known. His father had known. His grandmother had known. He had been a child, and adults around him had been hiding him from monsters. Your father came to me. For the first time in years, he was broken. He wanted to sell this house. He said selling it would pay the debt and give the 2 of you a fresh start. I said, no, I want you to read that line again, Caleb. Because for the rest of his life, your father told everyone, including you, I'm sure, that I refused to help. That I chose stones and timber over my own grandson. That story is what kept you alive. Selling this house would not have ended the danger. Those men do not forget a willing source of money. They would have come back, and back, and back. Your father did not understand this. I did. I had seen it before, in this town, with other families. So I made a different choice. I went to those men myself. Without your father's knowledge, I told them I would pay the entire debt in cash, in full, on one condition. They forget you exist. They walk away from your father forever. And I had a second condition. Everyone, including your father, including you, had to believe that I had abandoned this family. My reputation was the price of your safety, Caleb. That was the deal I made. I sold everything I had. Your great-grandmother's jewelry, the back parcel of land, my savings. Every single thing I owned that could be turned into cash. And that, my dearest boy, is a story for the next letter. For tonight, just know this. You were never abandoned. You were guarded. The shape of that guarding looked from the outside like absence, but it was not absence. All my love, always, Grandma Nellie. The letter slipped from his hand. He didn't pick it up. He sat in the dusty chair, in the silent room, in the long, pale light from a window his mother had once stood at as a little girl, and the crying that had been crouched behind his ribs for 2 years finally stood all the way up. And it walked out of him in long, ragged sobs that shook the chair and shook the desk, and shook him so hard he had to put his hands flat on the wood to keep from falling. He cried for his mother. He cried for his father. He cried for the boy who hadn't known. He cried for the woman who had spent so many birthdays writing to a child she was never allowed to hold. He cried until he had nothing left. The light through the window turned from pale gold to deep amber. The room held him. The house held him. And somewhere, in the silence between sobs, he understood, for the first time in his life, that he was not actually alone. When he could finally move again, his face was raw and his hands ached. He folded the letter carefully, slid it back into its envelope, set it on the desk. He looked at the 11 that remained. He wanted to read them all. Right now. Devour them. But something stopped him. Some quiet voice inside, one a day, like she meant it. He stood up. His legs were stiff. He walked around the room slowly. He ran his hands along the timber beams, the kitchenette, the mantel of the stone fireplace. He didn't know why he touched the mantel. It just felt important. The stones were cool, solid, older than anything he'd ever stood next to. He walked to the desk. He pulled open the top drawer. Inside were a few simple things: a pen, a small notepad, a pair of reading glasses, pencils sharpened to fine points, and one envelope. It was not numbered. It was not part of the 12. It sat alone in the drawer, with one line written across the front in his grandmother's hand. "Open this when you cannot go on." He stared at it. He didn't open it. He wasn't ready. He closed the drawer. He sat down at the desk. And as the last light faded through the arched window his mother had once watched the moon from, he placed his head down on his arms. He didn't sleep. He just listened. To the wind in the oaks outside. To the settling timbers of a house that had been waiting for him for 18 years. And to a thought, small and steady, beginning to take shape inside him. A thought he hadn't had since he was 16. A thought he hadn't been allowed. I'm home. I am home. He woke up in the dark. For a long moment he didn't know where he was. The desk under his cheek was cold. His arms were numb. The room smelled like old wood and lavender and something else. Cedar, the box. Then it all came back, in one rush. His grandmother. The letter. The men who'd tried to take him when he was a child. His mother's first steps on these floors. His father's hidden lies. The sobbing that had emptied him out. He sat up slowly. The arched window was a square of pale silver. Pre-dawn. Maybe 5 in the morning. He'd slept slumped over a desk for 9 hours. His back screamed. He didn't care. Because somewhere in the dark of that night, while he'd slept on top of his grandmother's letter, something had shifted. Something quiet. Something that felt almost like a decision. He stood. He stretched. And he walked to the window to watch the sun come up over Willow Creek for the first time in his life. The trees were black against the lightening sky. The river was a thin silver line through them. A wisp of smoke rose from a chimney somewhere in the distance. A town that had loved his grandmother. A town his grandmother had loved back. A town he had never been allowed inside. Until now. Pearl's Bakery had a hand-painted sign over the door. Pearl's Kitchen. Bread and coffee. Since 1987. It was the kind of sign that had been touched up by hand a dozen times across the decades. The kind of sign that meant somebody had stood there for almost 40 years, opening the same door at 5 in the morning. He pushed the door open. A bell rang. The smell hit him. Yeast, cinnamon, coffee, butter. A note of something sharp and savory underneath. Sage, maybe, or rosemary. It hit him in a place under his ribs that he didn't know was empty. Pearl looked up from behind the counter. Her face changed when she saw him. She didn't smile big. She just nodded once. Slow. You came. You said come. I said come when you were ready. I'm ready. She studied him. No, you're not. But you're close. She came around the counter. She wiped her hands on her apron. She put both her palms on his cheeks. Her hands were warm. Sit down, sweetheart. He sat. She brought him a bowl of soup. It was thick and golden. Big chunks of chicken. Little cubes of carrot. And so much garlic he could smell it before the spoon reached his mouth. He stared at it. That's the soup from the list, he said. That's the soup from the list. She wrote it 9 years ago. She did. How? Pearl sat down across from him. She poured him coffee. She didn't answer right away. Caleb, some people. They love so big and so far ahead, time can't catch up to them. Your grandmother was one of those people. He picked up the spoon. He ate. He had not eaten a real meal in 2 days. He had not eaten a meal made by someone who loved him in 2 years. Halfway through the bowl, his throat closed, and he had to set the spoon down. He pressed his hand to his mouth. Pearl didn't say anything. She just refilled his coffee. She just sat with him. She took him into the back of the bakery when the morning rush was over. There was a small office, a wooden desk, a bulletin board covered in faded photographs. She pointed at one in the middle. 2 women, late 40s maybe, standing in a vegetable garden, knee-deep in tomato vines, both of them laughing so hard you could see their back teeth. The one on the left was Pearl, the one on the right. Caleb's chest pulled tight. He had her chin. He had her eyebrows. He had her hands. That's her. That's her. She looks. Yes. Like. Yes, sweetheart. Like you. He looked at the photograph for a long time. Then he saw the other photographs around it. His grandmother in the snow. His grandmother at a church potluck. His grandmother holding a baby. His grandmother teaching a Sunday school class with a blackboard behind her. 20 photographs of a woman his entire family had told him was difficult and gone and not worth missing. How? His throat closed. How did nobody? How did I never know any of this? Pearl took a long breath. Because, sweetheart, that's how she designed it. Designed it. Your grandmother was a careful woman, Caleb. She thought 8 or 9 moves ahead like a chess player. She made a deal a long time ago to keep you safe. Part of that deal was that she had to disappear from your life. And she did. Completely. She never tried to contact you in person. She never showed up at your school. She never broke that promise. She wrote letters. She did. And she knew your father might keep them from you. So she wrote them anyway. Because she said, and I quote, "Pearl, even if he never reads a single one, I will not have my grandson grow up in a world where I did not write." He couldn't breathe. I don't understand why she had to disappear. I know. What kind of debt? That's in the letters, sweetheart. She'll tell you when you're ready. She always knew the order of things. He ran his hand over his face. Pearl. Yes. How did she die? Pearl's eyes went soft. Quiet, in her sleep, in the room above the carriage doors, the same room you slept in last night. She made me promise to find someone to wipe down the cedar box every 6 months until you came, so it would be clean for you when you opened it. He stared at her. For 6 years. For 6 years, with a soft cloth and a little linseed oil. I just left this past Tuesday. He lowered his head into his hands. He didn't cry. He just breathed. Pearl reached across the desk and put her hand on his head. She didn't say anything. Walter Crane gave him the key to the safe deposit box that afternoon. The bank smelled like old paper and floor polish. The vault was cold. The branch manager, Mrs. Dalton, walked him in. The box was long and narrow. He carried it into the private viewing room, closed the door, sat down. His hands shook so badly he had to use both to lift the lid. Inside, cash, stacks of it, $100 bills, wrapped in paper bands. He counted them with numb fingers. $50,000. His mind couldn't hold the number. Underneath the cash, a slim envelope. He opened it. A photograph fell out, black and white, curling at the edges. His grandmother, maybe in her 30s, sitting in a porch chair on what he recognized now as the Carriage house steps, holding a newborn baby, smiling so wide her eyes were almost closed. The baby was him. He turned it over. Caleb, 6 months. First time he laughed, he pressed his hand to his mouth. He'd had a grandmother who had laughed with him as a baby. He hadn't even known. Underneath the photograph, a small velvet pouch. He opened it. A wedding ring. Plain gold, worn smooth by decades of hands. A folded note. For your wife, whoever she turns out to be. Tell her about me. He sat in the bank vault and held the ring in his palm and could not move. Underneath everything, a single recipe card. Not a note. A recipe. Apple pie. The real one. He read it twice. He smiled. Through wet eyes. Through everything. She'd given him the recipe. Pearl had said she only gave it to one person. She'd given it to him. He used a piece of the cash to pay the property taxes that afternoon at the county clerk's office. The clerk looked up the address. She smiled. Big. Old Nellie's place. Yes, Mom. You family? Her grandson. Oh, honey. She stamped his receipt and pushed it across the counter. You make sure that garden gets going again this spring. She had the best peonies in 3 counties. He paid the deposits to turn on the electricity and the water. He bought work gloves, cleaning supplies, a kerosene lamp, 2 flashlights, a new lock for the door, bread and cheese and apples and a gallon of milk and a whole rotisserie chicken from the grocery store. He spent $38. And on his way home, he turned the iron key in the lock of the old Ford pickup downstairs in the Carriage house. He pumped the gas pedal twice. He held his breath, and he turned the key in the ignition. The truck coughed, sputtered, then with a deep, low rumble, it came alive. He sat in the cab and listened to his grandfather's truck idle for the first time in a decade. He didn't know his grandfather. He didn't know his grandmother. He didn't know any of these people. But they had known him. They had been preparing for him his whole life, and he was just now arriving. Silas Boone showed up the next morning with a thermos of coffee. Caleb didn't know who he was when he opened the door. The man was tall, 65 maybe, silver hair, weathered hands, a clipboard under one arm, a flannel shirt under a canvas jacket, eyes pale blue and quiet. Boone, Silas Boone, County Inspector. I didn't call. I know. You will eventually. I figured I'd come introduce myself first. Why? Because Pinnacle Development is going to file a complaint against this property within the week. I want you to know me before they do. Caleb stared at him. How do you know that? Because they file one every 6 months on every parcel they want and can't have, and your stepmother's lawyer notified them last Friday that the deed had transferred. Math isn't hard. Caleb didn't know what to say. Silas held out the thermos. Coffee. Why are you bringing me coffee? Because your grandmother fished my wife out of a snowbank in 2002. The world tilted again. Sir, come outside. Let an old man sit on your porch. They sat on the stone steps in the cold morning. Silas poured coffee into the thermos cup, handed it over. Snowstorm of 2002. Worst this town's ever had. Lily, that's my wife. She was pregnant. 8 months. Driving home from her sister's, skidded off County Road 7, hit her head on the steering wheel, knocked out cold. Snowbank covered the car within 40 minutes. Caleb stopped breathing. Your grandmother was driving back from a church meeting. saw a fender she didn't recognize sticking out of a drift, pulled over, climbed down, dug her out with her bare hands, drove her to my house, then drove to Doc Ramsey's place, then drove back with Doc. They saved the baby and saved Lily. Sir, my son Tucker was born 3 weeks later, healthy, loud, 22 years old now and still loud. Tucker Boone, local electrician. Decent kid. He'll be coming around this week to look at your wiring whether you ask him to or not, because his mother told him to. Caleb stared at the man. Your son is. My son is named after the song my wife was humming to him when your grandmother dug her out of that snowbank. Tucker. Lily named him for the song. So she'd remember every time she said his name. The cold air felt sharp in Caleb's throat. Mr. Boone. Silas. Yes, son. Why is everybody in this town being kind to me? Silas looked at him for a long moment. Caleb, your grandmother saved this town in 100 small ways, some big, most small, for 60 years. She was the kind of woman who showed up, who knew, who came when you didn't even know you needed somebody. I didn't know any of that. I know you didn't. Nobody told me. I know, my father said. He couldn't finish. Silas put a hand on his shoulder. Your father had his own grief, son. Grief makes a man rewrite stories. Don't hold it against him forever. He paid for it already. Caleb nodded. He couldn't speak. Silas finished his coffee, stood up, brushed off his jacket. Pinnacle's coming. They'll file. There'll be an inspection. Make this place safe. Make it solid. Don't worry about pretty. Worry about safe. Wiring, plumbing, heat, structure. That's all I look for. Okay? And Caleb. Yes, sir. Don't let them buy this house. I wasn't going to. Silas smiled. It was a small thing. A flicker. Good boy. He walked back to his truck. Caleb sat on the cold steps and watched him go. That afternoon he opened letter number 2. My dearest Caleb, if you are still reading, I am proud of you. The first letter is the hardest. You have already crossed a threshold a lot of grown men never cross. You have looked at a hard truth, and you have not run. I told you in my first letter that selling the house would not have ended the danger. I told you I made a different deal. I want to tell you what that deal cost, because you will see receipts of it in this house. And I do not want you to wonder. The men your father owed money to were not common criminals. They were a family, 3 generations of them, operating out of a city about 90 miles from where you grew up. They had a long memory and a longer reach. I sold my mother's pearls, $3,000. I sold the back parcel of land, 10 acres of woods that had been in our family for 90 years. $42,000. I sold the silver, $2,800. I emptied my savings, $11,400. That gave me $59,000. The debt was $84,000. I needed $25,000 more, and quickly. I went to my friend Pearl, who you have probably met by now. I asked her for a loan. She gave it to me without asking what for. She gave it to me on a handshake. I paid her back over 6 years, in cash, every month, and she never once asked me what the money had been for. That, Caleb, is what a friend looks like. I made the trip to the city. I met them in a restaurant. I gave them the money in a paper bag. I gave them the conditions. They laughed at me. Then they realized I was serious. Then they took the bag. The man who counted the money looked up at me when he was done. He said, Mrs. Whittaker, we will leave the boy alone. But you understand, if anyone on your side ever speaks our name, we will come back. I said, I understand. That is why I never told your father he was free. It would have given him hope, and hope makes men talk. He needed to keep believing he was hunted so he would keep his mouth shut, so you would stay safe. That is also why I never came to your school, never sent a birthday gift in the mail with my return address, never reached out, even when your mother died. Caleb, I want you to understand something. I do not think your father was a bad man. I think he was a young man who was drowning in grief and rage and shame. He needed someone to be the villain, because if I was the villain, then he could grieve cleanly. If I had told him the truth, it would have shattered him. He was already too thin. So I let him hate me. And I loved him. And I loved you. And I waited. I love you. Always. Grandma Nellie. He folded the letter. He sat on the steps of the carriage house. He looked out at the woods. He didn't cry this time. Something else happened. Something quieter and harder. A knot in his chest that had been there for 2 years. The knot he'd carried since his father's funeral. The knot that lived under his sternum and made it hard to breathe sometimes. It loosened. Just a little. Just enough. Tucker showed up that evening. He was Caleb's age, 22, solidly built, curly brown hair, a tool belt, a face that smiled easily. Tucker Boone. Caleb. I know who you are. Whole town knows who you are. My mum says hi. She also says, don't let me leave without taking the casserole in my truck. Casserole. Yeah, she made you a tuna noodle thing. I'm sorry, I tried to talk her out of it. She insisted. Caleb laughed. He was so surprised by the sound coming out of his own mouth that he laughed again. Tucker grinned. There he is. There who is? The grandkid. Welcome back, man. He brought in the casserole. He looked at the wiring. He whistled low through his teeth. Buddy, listen, this is bad. This is knob and tube from like 1928. Is it dangerous? It is what we electricians call a fire ready to happen. You can't live up here on this. Inspector won't pass it. It's got to come out. How much? For the whole house? Yeah. Tucker did some math in his head. He scratched his jaw. 11,000, with permits. Caleb thought about the 50,000 in the bank. Do it. You sure? Do it. You don't even know me, man. Your dad said you'd come. Tucker smiled. He told you that, huh? Yes, old man. Tucker shook his head. All right, I'll start tomorrow. Bring my buddy Marshall to help. We'll knock it out in a week. He picked up his tool belt. He paused at the door. Hey, Caleb. Yeah. I knew your grandmother. Caleb went still. You did. I went to a Sunday school when I was 7. She made cookies. She told us stories about the woods behind this house. She said this place was magic, and a magic boy was going to live here someday, and I thought she was nuts. He looked around the dusty workshop. Turns out she wasn't nuts. He left. Caleb stood in the doorway for a long time after his tail lights were gone. Ruth Mendoza came on Wednesday with a basket of cleaning supplies and no warning. She was 68, tiny, white hair in a bun, an apron with sunflowers on it, a voice like an old radio. She stood on the porch and put her hands on her hips. You're Caleb. Yes, Mom. I'm Ruth. I'm here to wash your curtains. My curtains. Honey, those windows look like they have soup on them. Don't fight me on this. He didn't fight her. She washed the curtains and the windows. She sang while she worked. Old hymns. Just a closer walk with thee. In the garden. Her voice was thin but true. She left at sunset. She did not take any money. Jim Calloway came on Thursday. 72. Retired carpenter. He showed up with a ladder strapped to the back of his truck and a pouch of slate roof tiles. Your roof's missing 6 tiles, north side. I'm fixing it. Sir, I can pay. Your grandmother fixed my marriage in 1991. We're square. He climbed the ladder. He fixed the roof. He did not explain how Nellie had fixed his marriage. He left at dusk. He did not take any money. By the end of the week, Caleb had electricity, running water, a working roof, clean windows, a casserole in the fridge from Lily Boone, a loaf of bread from Pearl, a jar of strawberry jam from Ruth, a bag of split firewood from Jim. He had not asked for any of it. He sat on the second floor that night in front of the cold fireplace, wrapped in his mother's blue sweater that Pearl had brought him from a cedar chest at her house. eating bread and jam by the light of a single bulb, and he understood something. His grandmother had not just left him a building, she had left him a whole town. She had spent 60 years depositing kindness into a community. And now the community was making the withdrawals on his behalf. Brenda showed up on a Sunday. He didn't recognize the car at first. A small sedan he didn't remember her owning. She parked at the bottom of the gravel drive and got out and just stood there. He came down the stairs slowly. She was thinner than he remembered. Her hair was different. She wore no makeup. She looked at the carriage house. She looked at him. She looked at the carriage house again. She put her face in her hands. He waited. When she lowered her hands, her eyes were wet. Roy left me. He didn't know what to say. She took a breath. Caleb, I was wrong. Okay. I don't expect you to forgive me. Okay. Your father. She closed her eyes. Your father left so much debt. He hadn't told me how much. When the lawyers came, after the funeral, I couldn't. I was already drowning. And then there was you. And you were so quiet all the time. So sad. And I didn't know how. I had never been a mother before. I didn't know how to be one to a sad teenager. I thought if I could just survive until you turned 18. Just survive me. Yes, and I am sorry. I am so sorry. That is what I came to say, whether you want to hear it or not. He looked at her. For 2 years she had been the villain in his story. Now she was a woman crying on his gravel driveway, holding her car keys with both hands like she might lose them. He did not say, I forgive you, because he didn't yet. But he said the only true thing he had. Come inside. I have soup. She followed him in. She looked at the workshop. She looked at the truck. She looked at the staircase leading up. She moved like a woman walking through a museum. He led her up to the 2nd floor. She sat at the wooden table. He warmed up Lily Boone's tuna casserole on the hot plate and gave her some. She ate a few bites. She set down her fork. She reached into her purse with shaking hands. She pulled out an envelope. Caleb, I need you to have this. What is it? It's a letter your father wrote you. He could not move. When? A week before the accident. He left it on his nightstand, in a sealed envelope with your name on it. I found it the morning of the funeral. You had it? Yes. 2 years. Yes. You had a letter from my dead father, and you kept it from me. She started to cry. I read it. I shouldn't have, but I did. And then I couldn't give it to you because of what it said about me, and because of what it said about her. She slid it across the table, his name in his father's handwriting. He didn't pick it up. She stood. I'll go. Stay. She turned. What? Stay until I read it. She sat back down. She put her hands flat on the table. He could see them shaking. He picked up the envelope. He opened it. His father's handwriting. Big and slanted. The way he'd written grocery lists and bedtime notes and birthday cards. Caleb, if you're reading this, something happened. I don't know what, but I want to leave this somewhere you'll find it. Son, I owe you so many apologies I don't know where to start. I'm going to take you to Willow Creek this summer. I'm going to introduce you to your grandmother. I should have done it years ago. I have been wrong about her for a long time, and the more I think about it, the more I see how wrong I was. She didn't abandon us, Caleb. I think she did the opposite. I haven't worked it out yet. But I'm going to find out. I have been a bad father since your mother died. I know I have. I have hidden things from you. There are letters from your grandmother in the back of my dresser drawer. I haven't opened them. I was too proud. I was too angry. I am ashamed. Brenda is a good woman. She is doing her best. She is not your mother and never will be. But she did not deserve the version of me she got. Be patient with her, son. I love you. I am sorry. I am going to do better. We are going to Willow Creek in June. Dad Caleb read it 3 times. Brenda watched him. He folded the letter carefully. He set it on the table. He was going to take me. Yes. In June. Yes. He died in April. Yes. He looked up at her. She was crying silently, both hands flat on the table. He didn't know what he felt. It was not forgiveness yet. But it was not hatred anymore either. It was the recognition that there had been more than one drowning person in that house. And he had been a drowning kid. And she had been a drowning woman. Brenda. Yes. Thank you. She nodded. She couldn't speak. He stood. He walked over to the kitchenette. He cut a slice of Pearl's bread. He spread it with Ruth's jam. He brought it to her. Eat something. She took it. She cried into it. He sat across from her and didn't say a word. Donovan Reeve showed up the next afternoon. He drove a black SUV with tinted windows. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than the truck downstairs. He was 45, tall, dark hair beginning to grey at the temples, sharp jaw, a handshake that was too firm by half. Mr. Whitaker. Caleb. Caleb, I'm Donovan Reeve, CEO of Pinnacle Development. I wanted to introduce myself. Okay. May I come in? No? Donovan smiled. It was a polished smile. It did not reach his eyes. I respect that. What do you want? I want to make you a fair offer for a property you cannot possibly afford to keep. Already got an offer. I'm prepared to raise it. 500,000. Cash. Closes in a week. No contingencies. Caleb said nothing. Donovan tilted his head. That's life-changing money for a young man in your position. I know. And yet. And yet. Donovan studied him. You grew up in this town? No, sir. I did. Caleb went still. You grew up here. Born and raised. My father was Eddie Reeve. He drank himself to death in 1998 in the bar that used to be where the laundromat is now. I was 17. I left that night. I built a company. I came back. To buy it. To do something with it. To pave it. Donovan's smile thinned. To improve it. Same thing. Caleb, listen to me. This town is dying. The young people are leaving. The houses are falling down. I'm bringing 400 jobs, a river marina, restaurants, boutique shops. I am giving Willow Creek a future. You're giving Willow Creek your father's funeral. The smile dropped. Excuse me. You hate this town because your dad failed you here. That's not Willow Creek's fault. That's his. A long, dangerous silence. Donovan's jaw worked. You are 18 years old. Yes, sir. You don't know me. No, sir. My offer stands until Friday. After Friday, I will use every legal tool available to take this property by eminent domain, and you will receive the assessed value of a derelict outbuilding. How much is that? 62,000 versus 500 versus 500. Caleb leaned against the doorframe. He looked at Donovan for a long time. Donovan looked back. Two young men. Two fathers. Two completely different decisions about what to do with the wreckage. Mr. Reeve. Donovan. Mr. Reeve, I'm not going to sell. Not for 500,000. Not for 5 million. So when you go back to your office and your lawyers and your spreadsheet, I want you to put a note in the file. Put a note that says, the kid said no, and he meant it. Donovan stared at him. Then he turned. He walked back to his SUV. He slammed the door. He drove away. Dust rose from the gravel drive in a long, slow plume. Caleb watched it settle. His hands were shaking, just a little. He hadn't known they would. But he had said it. And he had meant it. He read letter 11 that night by the fire. The fire was new. Tucker had helped him haul Nellie's grandfather's old cast-iron stove up from the back of the workshop and install it. The pipe ran up through the chimney. The first fire had taken hours to burn clean. The second had filled the whole second floor with dry, steady heat. He sat in front of it, now wrapped in his mother's sweater. He opened the 11th envelope. My dearest Caleb, by the time you read this, you will have done a lot. You will have rebuilt a roof. You will have rewired walls. You will have eaten Pearl's soup. You will have met Silas. You will have learned that this town remembers me. I hope that has comforted you. There is one secret left in this house. I did not hide it from you. I waited for you to be ready for it. My grandfather was a stonemason. His name was Thomas Whitaker. He was not a sentimental man. He was a man who said what he meant and built what he said. When he built the fireplace in this room, he built it with a purpose beyond heat. He built it with a secret. I will not tell you what it is in this letter, Caleb, because that secret is not just mine to give. It belongs to Walter Crane. He has held it for me for 30 years. When you are ready, when you have proven that you intend to keep this house, when you have looked Pinnacle in the eye and said no, when you are not just my grandson but a Whitaker, go to Walter, tell him you are ready, he will tell you the rest. And Caleb, the fireplace is the heart of this house. There is a reason for that. Trust the house. It will protect you. It always has. All my love, always. Grandma Nellie. He folded the letter. He looked at the fireplace. The flames inside curled around a fresh oak log. The stones around the hearth were dark with 100 years of soot. The mantel above was made of a single thick beam of timber, scarred and burnished by time. He stood up. He walked to the hearth. He placed his hand flat on the cool stone of the chimney. He could feel the warmth of the fire on the other side. A century of his family had built and tended and loved this fireplace, and it had been waiting for him to ask the right question. He whispered into the silent room, "What did you build, great-grandfather? What did you hide?" The fire crackled. The wind moved in the oaks outside, and from a long way off, the distant bell of the Lutheran church on Elm Street began to ring out a slow Sunday evening. He stood there a long time. He did not know it yet. But somewhere in the county clerk's office, a letter from Pinnacle Development was being filed. A formal complaint, an inspection request, a legal assault designed to take from him the only thing he had ever wanted to keep. He went to bed. He set Walter Crane's name on the desk by the cedar box. In the morning he would walk back into town. In the morning he would ask the question. In the morning he would learn what his great-grandfather had hidden in the heart of the house 92 years ago, and nothing in his life would ever be the same again. The inspection notice arrived on a Tuesday. Caleb found it taped to the carriage house door when he came back from town with a sack of nails and 2 gallons of paint. White envelope. Official seal. His stomach dropped. He sat down on the steps. He opened it. Notice of Code Inspection, 112 Old Mill Road, filed by complainant Pinnacle Development Group. Inspection scheduled for Tuesday the 14th at 9 a.m. Failure to pass shall result in condemnation proceedings. The 14th, 12 days. He read it again. 12 days to make a building that had been asleep for a decade pass a county code inspection. He laughed. Once, a short, bitter laugh. Because, of course, because Donovan had said Friday, because Donovan was a man of his word in the worst way. Caleb folded the notice, put it in his pocket, went inside. He stood in the middle of the workshop. He looked at the bare bulb hanging from a wire. The new wiring Tucker had run along the ceiling. The half-finished plumbing. The patches of plaster he hadn't gotten to. The windows that needed seals. The insulation he hadn't bought yet. 12 days. He took a breath. He sat down at the workbench. He made a list. By the time the sun set, the list was 32 items long. He stared at it. He thought, I cannot do this alone. The thought arrived complete. Not panicked, just true. He had spent 2 years believing he was alone. He had spent his whole life, if he was honest, believing it. He was wrong. He picked up the notice. He put on his jacket. He drove the Ford pickup into town with the heater rattling and the headlights cutting through a thin, cold rain. He parked outside Pearl's bakery. He walked in. She was wiping down the counter. The bell rang. She looked up. She saw his face. What? Pinnacle filed. She dropped her cloth. When? Today. Inspection in 12 days. She stared at him. Then she walked over to the door. She flipped the sign from open to closed. She locked the deadbolt. She turned around. Sit down. He sat. She picked up the phone. She started dialing. By the time the bakery filled up, it was past 9 at night. Pearl had called Silas. Silas had called Tucker. Tucker had called Marshall. Marshall had called Jim Calloway. Jim had called Ruth. Ruth had called the church secretary. The church secretary had called 8 more people. By 9:14, 22 people stood inside Pearl's bakery. A few in church clothes from the Tuesday evening service, a few in work boots, a few in pajama pants under winter coats. The owner of the hardware store, the plumber, a retired electrician named Glenn, a woman named Marguerite who'd taught Sunday school at the Lutheran church for over 30 years, 2 of Tucker's high school friends who'd grown up to be roofers. They stood in a half-circle around Caleb. He stood up. He held the inspection notice. His throat closed. Pearl spoke for him. Pinnacle wants to take Nellie's house. They've filed a complaint. Inspection is in 12 days. The boy's been working alone. The room was silent. Then Marguerite, who was 81, said, Not anymore. That was all she said. Glenn, the retired electrician, walked over to Caleb. He held out his hand. What time tomorrow? Sir. What time tomorrow do you want me there? Caleb couldn't speak. Tucker put a hand on his shoulder. 6 a.m. We start at 6. I'll bring biscuits, said Marguerite. I'll bring sandwiches, said Pearl. I'll bring the ladder truck from the firehouse, said one of the roofers. I'll bring my plumb bob and the level, said Jim. I'll bring myself, said Ruth Mendoza, and my apron, and I will scrub every floor in that house. The room kept going. Person after person, tools, time, bread, hands. Caleb stood in the middle of all of it and could not stop the tears falling down his face. Pearl came over. She put a hand on his cheek. Honey, I know. I don't deserve. Stop. Stop, sweetheart. Listen to me. This isn't charity. This is a debt your grandmother spent 60 years paying forward, and you are the boy it gets paid back to. Don't argue with the math. Just say thank you. He nodded. He couldn't say it. She kissed his forehead. Go home. Sleep. 6 a.m. comes fast. The next 11 days were a blur of hands. At dawn, the gravel drive filled with trucks, headlights and steam from coffee thermoses and the low sound of car doors closing in the cold. Glenn arrived first. Then Tucker and Marshall. Then Jim. Then a man named Pete, who Caleb had never met, who said he owed Nellie a favor from 1979 and would not be specific about what. They tore out the rest of the old wiring. They installed a new electrical panel. They ran new pipes from the well to a new water heater Glenn had pulled out of his nephew's basement and refused to charge for. They fixed the back door, replaced the window seals, reinforced 2 floor joists, patched the plaster, hung the old screen on the kitchen window. The women came too. Ruth Mendoza scrubbed the floors on her knees. Pearl hung curtains she had sewn from bolts of unbleached muslin from a fabric store close out in 1996. Marguerite arranged dried lavender from her own garden in mason jars on every windowsill. A woman named Donna, whom Caleb had not met before, set up a folding table in the workshop and rolled out an enormous chart of the property and drew the inspector's likely path through it in red pen. Lily Boone brought lunch every day. Tuna casserole, chicken and dumplings, beef stew, apple crisp, cornbread, biscuits. A pie called Impossible Coconut that Caleb ate 3 slices of and could not explain. Silas Boone came at dusk every evening. He stood in the doorway. He looked the day's work over with his arms crossed. He grunted approval. Or twice, grunted disapproval, and made Tucker redo something. Then he sat on the porch with Caleb for 10 minutes and drank 1 cup of coffee. He didn't talk much. He didn't need to. By the 8th day, the carriage house was unrecognizable. The walls were clean, the floors gleamed, the wiring was neat and tucked into walls. The plumbing whispered instead of clanged. The fireplace burned bright. The arched window his mother had once stared out of as a girl had been washed inside and out with vinegar water by Marguerite herself, and now poured pure golden light into the loft like a stage spot. It looked like a home. It looked like the home it had always been waiting to be. On the 11th night, Caleb sat alone at the wooden table by the window after everyone had gone. He looked around the room, the cedar box on the desk, the kettle on the kitchenette, the wood stove glowing orange, his mother's blue sweater folded on the back of a chair, a jar of dried lavender on the sill. He whispered into the empty room, "Grandma, I think you'd like it." The fire cracked once. He took it as agreement. The inspection came on a sharp blue Tuesday. Silas arrived at 8:55. Clipboard, reading glasses. Tucker and Pearl stood out by the gravel drive. They tried not to look like they were holding their breath. They were holding their breath. Caleb opened the door. Silas stepped inside. He did not nod. He did not smile. He did not speak. He walked. He walked the workshop. He walked the staircase. He walked the loft. He looked at the panel. He looked at the pipes. He looked at the heat source. He looked at the joists. He looked at the foundation through a hatch in the floor he hadn't known existed until that morning. He took 92 minutes. When he came back into the loft, his face was unreadable. He stood by the fireplace. He looked at Caleb. "Son." "Yes, sir." "I'm signing off." "Sir." "You passed." Caleb's knees almost gave. Silas held up a hand. "Listen to me, son. There's something else." "Yes, sir." "Pinnacle filed something else with my office last week. I just got it cleared up this morning." "What?" "They petitioned the county for an eminent domain seizure. They claimed they needed an access road to the river, and that this property is the only viable route. I rejected it." "Why?" "Because there's another perfectly good access point a quarter-mile down the river. They were lying. I told them so in writing." Caleb stared at him. "Sir, they are not done with you. I know. They will get more creative. I know. But what they cannot do anymore, Caleb, is condemn this house. This house is up to code. This house is your home. They cannot take it from you on technical grounds. You took that weapon away from them with 12 days and 22 people and a town full of debts to your grandmother." He held out his hand. Caleb shook it. "Welcome home, son." He walked out. Caleb stood by the fireplace. He put his hands on the cool stone. He whispered, "I think I'm ready." The fire answered with a single soft pop of resin. He went to find Walter. Walter Crane was waiting for him. The lawyer had a cup of black tea on his desk. He had a folder beside it. The folder was old. The folder was the color of cream gone yellow, tied with a ribbon that had once been red. He looked up when Caleb walked in. He smiled, a small, tired, joyful smile. "You're ready." "I'm ready." "Sit down, Caleb." He sat. Walter reached for the folder. He untied the ribbon with the careful patience of a man handling a relic. He opened the folder. Inside, a single document, hand-typed, the paper soft with age, the ink faded but legible, stamped in 2 places with notary seals from 1934, a wax seal at the bottom, a signature in spidery black ink, Thomas Whitaker, a second signature beside it, Cornelius Ashworth. Walter slid it across the desk. "Read it." Caleb read. He read it 3 times, because his mind kept refusing to land on what it said. When he finally looked up, his face had drained of all color. Walter watched him. "You see it now." "I see it." Tell me what you see. My great-grandfather, in 1934, he didn't just get this carriage house from the Ashworth family. No, he got. Say it, Caleb. He got 50 feet of riverbank, and the primary water rights to that section of the river. Walter nodded. And the public deed. The public deed shows the property line ending 100 feet from the river. The way Pinnacle has been buying up parcels assumes the water belongs to them, and it does not. It does not. It belongs to me. Walter closed his eyes. Yes, son. How? Cornelius Ashworth had 3 banks foreclosing on him in 1934. He couldn't keep the riverbank in his name. But he was a clever man, and he liked your great-grandfather. So they did a separate, notarized legal agreement, and they had it filed in a private registry separate from the main county records. The water went to your family. The official deed still shows the Ashworth's boundaries. The riverbank changed hands quietly, in a parallel document, a document that has remained legally binding for 92 years. Pinnacle doesn't know. No. They've been buying parcels for 9 years, assuming the river was free and clear. Yes. Their entire condo plan. Their entire condo plan. It depends on water access. It depends on water that legally belongs to you, Caleb, and to no one else. Caleb pressed his hands to his face. He tried to make the world stop spinning. Walter. Yes. My great-grandfather. Yes. He hid this, in the house. How? Walter smiled. He was a stonemason, Caleb. Yes. He set the original 1934 boundary marker, a square-cut piece of granite, hand-engraved with the property line coordinates. He set it into the foundation of the fireplace. Into. The southeast cornerstone of the hearth itself is the boundary marker, engraved on its underside, concealed by the firebox above it. It cannot be moved without destroying the fireplace, which means the fireplace is a legal monument. Yes. My fireplace is the corner of the property. Yes, son. Caleb looked at the floor. His grandmother had told him, the fireplace is the heart of this house. She had not been speaking metaphorically. She had been telling him exactly what it was. A heart, a monument, a truth carved in stone by a man who had lived through a depression and decided to build a permanent record. His chest ached. Walter said softly, "There's one more thing." Caleb looked up. What? Walter pulled an envelope from inside the folder. The same handwriting. Caleb had seen it on 12 letters in a cedar box. Now there was a 13th. This one was addressed not to him. It was addressed to Walter. She wrote me a letter, Walter said. She told me to give it to you when you were ready. Read it to me. You sure? Read it to me, Walter. I can't. My hands. His hands were shaking too hard. Walter cleared his throat. He read, Dear Walter, if you are reading this aloud to my grandson, then he has come. He has lit the fires. He has stood in front of the fireplace, and he has felt the weight of it, and he has asked the right question. I knew he would. Walter, please tell him this, word for word, as best you can. Caleb, my love, you will be wondering by now why I never sold this house. You will know that there were standing offers for many years. You will have done the math. You will have realized that for 30 years I could have sold this property and lived comfortably for the rest of my life. I want to tell you why I never did. This house is not just a house, Caleb. This house is the only place on earth where your mother was happy. She was born in the room with the arched window. She took her first steps on the cobblestones downstairs by the workbench. She fell asleep in front of the fireplace, with her cheek on the rug and the firelight on her face. She picked strawberries in the garden out back the summer she turned 7. There is a spot, 3 steps from the back door, where she dropped a bowl of them, and they rolled everywhere, and she sat down in the grass and laughed so hard she cried. She picked up 6 of them. She handed them to me one at a time. She said, Mama, save these. I want to remember them. I did, Caleb. I saved them. I have saved them for you. I kept this house because this is the place that held my daughter, because the walls of this house remember her, because the fireplace warmed her, because the floorboards know her weight. I could not sell that, Caleb, not for any sum. I held this house for you because someday, somehow, I knew you would walk through that door, and I wanted you to walk into the only place on earth that still held her. I wanted the walls that had held her to hold you. I wanted the floor that had carried her first steps to carry yours. I wanted the fireplace that had warmed her cheeks to warm yours. This is the inheritance, Caleb. Not the building, not the water rights, not the truck downstairs. The inheritance is the place that remembers. Memory, my dearest boy, is what keeps the people we love close to us. Build a life full of moments worth remembering, and then leave the people you love a place that holds those moments, so that even after you are gone, they can come home. That is what I have done for you. That is what I am trusting you to do for the children you will someday have. The fireplace, Caleb, is the heart. Tend it well. I love you forever. Grandma Nellie. Walter set the letter down. His old hands were shaking. Caleb sat very still. He did not cry. He had done all his crying. What he felt now was not crying. What he felt now was a vast, calm, terrible love. The kind of love that had been waiting for him his whole life. The kind of love that did not ask anything from him. The kind of love that had simply, patiently, decade after decade, kept the house clean and the fire warm and the cedar box dusted, and waited for the boy to find his way home. He stood up. Walter. Yes, son. I know what to do. I thought you might. Set up the meeting. With Pinnacle. With Donovan Reeve. Where? At the Carriage house, by the fireplace. Walter nodded. He smiled. It would be my pleasure. Donovan came alone. He pulled up in his black SUV at 3 on a Friday afternoon. He wore a charcoal suit and a steel grey tie. He carried a leather portfolio. Caleb met him at the door. Mr. Reeve. Caleb. Come in. He did. Caleb led him up the stairs. To the loft. To the fireplace. There was a fire burning. Low. Steady. Walter Crane sat in a chair by the window. The 1934 document was on the wooden table. Scented. Notary seals visible. Donovan saw it. He stopped. He looked at it. He picked it up. He read it. He read it twice. He set it down. He sat in the empty chair on the other side of the table. He looked at Caleb. His face had gone very pale. How long have you known? I learned 3 days ago. How long has it existed? 92 years. Where is the boundary marker? You're sitting 6 feet from it. Donovan looked at the fireplace. He understood. His hands closed into fists on the table. Caleb. Yes. You have me. Yes. You have my project. Yes. My investors, my timeline, I know. Silence. The fire popped. Donovan stared at the document. Caleb watched his face. He saw it. The 17-year-old who'd left town the night his father had drunk himself to death. The boy who had built a corporation out of his own shame. The man who had come back to bulldoze a town that had not saved him. Caleb watched him. He thought of his own father. He thought of how grief and shame had taught his father to call his grandmother a monster. He thought of how easy it would be, right now, to crush this man across the table. He could. Walter would write the letter. The water rights would kill the project. Pinnacle would lose hundreds of millions. Donovan would face his investors empty-handed. It would be easy. Caleb leaned forward. Mr. Reeve. Yes. Your mother. Donovan flinched. Excuse me. Your mother. Eunice. Is she still living? Donovan stared at him. His mouth opened, closed. How do you? Pearl told me. Pearl knows everyone. My mother is at Maple Grove. She's 78. She's got dementia. Some days she knows me. Some days she doesn't. What kind of son does she think you are? Excuse me. On the days she remembers you, Mr. Reeve, what kind of son does your mother think you are? Donovan's jaw worked. He didn't answer. Caleb pushed the document slightly aside. I'm not going to crush you, Mr. Reeve. Then what? I'm going to give you a way out. Of yourself. I don't follow. You came back here to prove something to a dead man. Your father, yes? That is not. Your father is not watching, Mr. Reeve. He has not been watching for 28 years. The only person who is watching is your mother, and she is not going to remember Pinnacle Development. She is not going to remember a marina or a condo. She is not going to remember anything soon. Donovan went still. Caleb softened his voice. But if you build her something, while she still remembers you, she will remember it. Even after she forgets your name, she will know that her son built something good. What are you suggesting? Drop the condo plan. Caleb, drop it. Build a community park instead. The land you've already bought. Make it a park. With a community garden, with benches, with a playground, with a pavilion, with a stage. Name it after her. Eunice Reeve Park. Put a plaque at the entrance with her photograph. Take her to the ribbon cutting. Tell her you built it for her. Hold her hand. That's not a business model. It is a different kind of business, Mr. Reeve. It is the business of dying with your mother knowing that you became someone she could be proud of. Donovan stared at the fire. His eyes went bright. He blinked hard. My investors. Pinnacle is your company. You are the CEO. You eat the loss. You write it off as a goodwill investment in a community where you intend to do future business. You restructure. Your investors take a hit, but they keep you. You stay solvent. You've thought about this. I have. You're 18. I am. A long silence. Donovan put both hands flat on the table. He looked down at them. He spoke without looking up. My mother used to take me to a park in this town when I was little. Back before my father got bad. There was a sandbox, a swing set. She used to push me on the swing and sing. I haven't been to a park since I was 9 years old. Mr. Reeve. Yes, it's not too late. He looked up. His eyes were wet. He nodded once. I'll need a lawyer. Walter coughed politely. I'm available. Donovan laughed. A wet, broken laugh. Of course you are. Caleb stood up. He held out his hand. Donovan looked at it. Then he stood up too, and he shook it. Spring came late that year, but when it came hard. The peonies broke ground in the back garden by the second week of April. Marguerite sat in a folding chair under the apple tree and read out loud from a gardening book Nellie had owned, the margins thick with Nellie's pencil notes. By the middle of June, the strawberries were red. Caleb picked a bowl of them on a Saturday morning. He carried them inside. He set them on the wooden table by the window. He sat down. He thought about a 7-year-old girl who had once dropped a bowl just like this one in the grass behind this house. He took the bowl to Pearl's bakery. He gave her the strawberries. She made a pie. They ate it at her kitchen table. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The bakery in the Carriage house opened in July. He called it Nellie's. He sold bread on Saturdays, apple pie on Sundays. He gave half his profits to the Willow Creek Food Bank, the same one his grandmother had volunteered at for 30 years. Pearl came every Saturday. Tucker installed a small wooden sign over the door that read, Established 2024. Built on love. Ruth and Marguerite ran the register on weekends. Jim Calloway came every morning at 6 and drank 1 cup of coffee and complained about the weather. Silas Boone came every Friday at 5 and refused to pay for anything and tipped $20 in cash anyway. Brenda came on Sundays. She drove up from her apartment, 2 hours away. She helped Caleb close at the end of the day. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. She came. He let her come. That was what mattered. She brought him a small, framed photograph one Sunday in October. His father, maybe 20 years old, standing on the Carriage house steps, smiling. "He was here once," she said. "Before everything, with your mother. I found it in his sock drawer." He hung it by the front door, right where everyone would see it. His father had been here, once, smiling. That mattered. Donovan Reeve drove him to Maple Grove on a cold November morning. They sat in the wood-panelled common room. Eunice Reeve sat in a wheelchair by the window. Her hair was thin and silver. Her eyes were faded blue. She did not know who Donovan was that day. Donovan held her hand anyway. He told her about the park. He told her there was a swing set. He told her there was a sandbox. He told her there was a plaque with her photograph at the entrance. He told her she would have loved it. He told her she did love it. He told her she had been there last summer at the ribbon cutting, and she had laughed in the sun, and there were photographs. She didn't remember, but she smiled. She squeezed his hand. She said, "You're a good boy." She didn't know who he was, but she said it. He cried into her shoulder for a long time. Caleb stood by the window and looked out at the parking lot and did not interrupt. When they were leaving, Donovan stopped at the door. He looked at Caleb. "Caleb." "Yes. Thank you. Don't thank me, Mr. Reeve." "Donovan. Donovan, don't thank me. Thank her." He pointed at the framed photograph beside the bed. A young Eunice Reeve, maybe 30, hair down, smiling, holding a baby. The baby was Donovan. Donovan went back into the room. He sat down beside her. He thanked his mother. She didn't know what for. She smiled anyway. On the first cold night of December, Caleb sat at the wooden desk in the loft. Snow was coming. He could smell it on the wind. The fire was burning low. The wood stove ticked quietly. He had pulled out a fresh sheet of cream-colored paper from a stack Pearl had given him for his 19th birthday a month ago. He had a pen. He had a kettle whistling in the kitchenette. He had Brenda's quiet snoring from the small spare room he'd built for her. He had the cedar box on the desk, closed, with 12 letters resting inside. He had a 13th letter from Walter, framed on the wall. He had a wedding ring in his pocket. He had not given it to anyone yet. But maybe one day. He picked up the pen. He took a long breath. He began to write. "To my future grandchild, you don't exist yet. Not as a person I can hold, but you exist as a thought. If you are reading this, it means I am gone. It means a long stretch of years has passed. It means you have walked into a house that has been waiting for you, and you have found a cedar box on the desk by the arched window. I want to tell you about a woman named Nellie. I want to tell you about a town called Willow Creek. I want to tell you about a fire that has not gone out in this fireplace for over 100 years. I want to tell you that you are not alone. That you have never been alone. Start here, sweetheart. Start with this letter. The rest of the story is in the rooms around you. Listen to them. They will tell you everything." He set the pen down. The kettle whistled. He stood up. He poured himself a cup of tea. Outside the arched window, the first snow of the season began to fall on the oak trees and the cobblestones and the slate roof and the river silver in the distance. Inside, the fire glowed. Inside, the house breathed. Inside, a young man stood at a window his mother had once watched the moon from, holding a cup of tea his grandmother had taught a stranger to teach him to make. He raised his tea to the window. He whispered into the falling snow, "Hi, Grandma." "I made it. I'm home." The fire popped behind him. The house held him.